So, getting into MySpace was, it was the Wild Wild West. I would call it the Wild Wild West of social media. It was at a time where it was basically, you had a MySpace page, you got a MySpace page, and you could do whatever, I don't say whatever you wanted, but compared to the social media out now, you could do whatever you wanted on your one page, right? You can. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Office Hour Tangents, where I generally come straight from class and I discuss the tangents that I may or may not have gone on or gone off on in class. This is one, it's actually before class, so it's just something I was thinking about before class, piggybacking off something that we were discussing last night in class, and it had to do with social media. And I was asking them, since one of the reasons, okay, before I get started, I want to thank, I think I'm on, this might be podcast number 22. I started this as a release, more of therapy. It's just therapeutic to kind of just talk about stuff, and I'm up to like 22 of these. So thank you to those of you who are watching and listening out there. I know it's not a lot, I didn't do it for the views. I might start doing it for the views in a minute, but prior to this, I was just kind of learning it and then just doing it because it makes me feel good. But thank you to everybody that's been watching, listening, giving me feedback. It's not a lot of you, but I do appreciate you. I don't care if there's 2 people watching. That's dope. It's super dope that you watch, and I'm humbled. All right, so as far as social media goes, I was asking them what's next. So if anybody's been a student of mine before, I often will ask them, especially when I used to teach at FAMU, I will ask them, so what's the new hotness? So right now I come into every class like, hey, what have you learned in the last 24 hours? What's something new you can teach me? You can teach the little class. What should we be knowing about? And it used to be, hey, what's the new hotness? And I'll ask the class because, I'm getting up in age and I can't be keeping up on all the new and latest trends for too much longer. I don't know, but maybe we'll see. But I asked the class, like, what do you think is the next predominant, or I don't want to say hot, but the next trend we're going to see in the social media space? Because it just seems to me that we've kind of reached a point in time where we might have done all we can do with social media that's going to be, popular and used by like the masses. Okay. And the students really, it was kind of like a silence and a thought process, and the answers started coming out, and the answers were more so like things that are similar to what we see already. Things that are similar to the Twitters and the Facebooks and the TikToks of the world and the Instagrams of the world. And there wasn't much else. It was just like variations of that. And that's what we've been seeing, lately, right? So I just got into, talking to them about how my career has gone and how I've rolled the wave of the internet because of when I graduated undergrad, right? So I graduated undergrad in December 1999. I can proudly say, and I always claim, that I was the last graduating class of the millennium. So, but the significance of that is when I graduated, so when I was in college and when I graduated, that's when, I don't want to say the internet took off, but the internet, we was in the middle of the internet boom, the .com boom. Right, which was soon to be a .com bust. But the internet, was super percolating when I was in college and just graduated, like that very, very delicate time of just excitement and dopeness, right? So I've been a professional since the kind of, I don't want to say the inception of social media, but the popularization of social media. And I just wanted to give them a little history of my history of social media, not getting into, the exact years and all the data and all that stuff, but just a conversational type of thing. So I told them about the first social media platform that I heard about. I never really used it. I used to go on it, but I never kind of like was a heavy user of it of it, and that was Black Planet. There's this resource called Black Planet, came out in 2001, right? So a while back, and it was focused on, black folk, but anybody can use it, like anybody can use anything, right? But it definitely had a black folk slant. And there was something before that I remember I read about, never used also, called Friendster. Okay, but and as I say this, remember the iPhone didn't come out until 2007. So 2001 up to 2007, if anything that was popping off, it was popping off on computers. You had to go to the computer to social media it up. So we can just ascertain that after the smartphone became prevalent in people's pockets, social media really took off, because you can just be social wherever you are instead of having to open up the computer and do it. But Black Planet, I heard about Black Planet and used it, and it was like a social media platform, but it was almost more so like a jack of all trades. It was like a forum. It was a community building type of thing. It was a way to get groups together and bounce ideas or just be social in that way. And I think it was the precipice of it, because I did see some article that said a lot of people credit MySpace with being like the first like super popular social media platform. But, somebody from MySpace, and, you can Google it yourself, basically said, hey, they used Black Planet as one of the inspirations for how MySpace operated. So, getting into MySpace was the Wild Wild West. I would call it the Wild Wild West of social media. It was at a time where it was basically, you had a MySpace page, you got a MySpace page, and you could do whatever, I don't say whatever you wanted, but compared to the social media out now, you could do whatever you wanted on your one page, right? You can add code. None of these platforms would let you even dabble with code. You can add code, which was usually mainly cascading style sheets, which changes the style of your page. So if you're from the MySpace generation and you were able to get like a blinking background or blinking text or something crazy like that, you had to use cascading style sheets, which is code. So you were coding even though you didn't know it, and you were hacking, because that wasn't even like a official MySpace thing. It was just like people would figure it out, and then through the social media space, they would tell other people about it. Like, hey, how'd you get that blinking background? Which is crazy obnoxious. And they were like, hey, just use this code, copy and paste this code, or go to this resource. And you would see these resources pop up on the internet that would assist you with specific types of code you can add to MySpace and how to do it. And it was definitely a hack. But the point is, it was like a wild, wild west. You could do whatever. You can upload songs. You can post videos, which was more difficult to do than it is now, because YouTube wasn't even out yet, right? So, and I don't have a timeline in front of me now, but after MySpace, so I talked to them about basically so in a sense of not the technological sense, but more in the track of user attention spans. So this is the class I'm teaching now. It's basic graphic design. So it's like the base freshman level class for all creative majors. And one of the things I just reiterate is that the base level of design, most design that you create, the first thing it has to be is interesting. It has to be interesting before it can be educational, before it can be informative, before it could direct you to things. Before all of that, it has to be interesting. It has to catch your eye, or it has to be interesting enough to captivate somebody for the amount of time that is needed to consume the content that the client or whomever is trying to get across this message can get it across. Okay, so it has to be interesting. So the way to do that on the web back in the day was like flashing links and just stuff that's moving around, right? Because there was no video on the web back in the day. There was no, you could barely get an animated GIF on there, right? So the attention span. So when you looked at a MySpace page, some MySpace pages were done, and they look pretty good. They were done by people that knew what they were doing as far as from a design standpoint. But most were just crazy. It was insane. Looking back on it, it's like nostalgic, like, oh, I kind of want to go back there. But at the time, it was insane. It was like you have a black background with black text over it. It was just nuts, right? And it can scroll for as long as you had information. It was just crazy, the wild, wild west. But the attention spans were based on you had to go to a computer or a laptop, sit down and interact with MySpace. So you're more apt to just sit down and do that and just kind of spend hours on there, really, because it's a computer. You're sitting down at a chair. So what happened with MySpace was Facebook happened. So like I said, I think MySpace was 2001. And I'm gonna stop saying these years because I'm gonna mess some up. But after that was Facebook. Shortly thereafter, MySpace had its reign, and then Facebook came out, and the whole thing was, hey, you heard this thing called Facebook? And at the time, only students in higher education could access Facebook. After everybody's seen the Social Network movie, but Facebook came along and basically took away the creativity that you can have on your pages. Like immediately, like I was not feeling Facebook when it first launched. Like I wanted to get on it because at the time I just needed to learn it because it was tech and I needed to learn it before everybody else can learn it. But I was disillusioned that everything had to be white and blue. Everything was white and blue. Everything compared to MySpace, everything was so sterile. So you had a page and a profile, but it was just like you could post a message and you can upload photos. That was like in the beginning, all you can do. Seemed like, but you think about it from the aspect of the attention span. So the Wild Wild West MySpace, you captivate your audience by you just want to make your page look as interesting as possible. So you just keep the person on your page. Facebook came along because our attention spans are propensity are, and when I say attention spans, when I was talking to the students, I'm also talking about. I always say people don't read. Like that's one of the other first messages I lead in with when I'm teaching like basic graphic design is people don't read. So do away with all the text, right? Try to get your message across with an image or images. And then if you can't do that, then you can start writing stuff down. And that's like at the base level how I kind of lead them down this line. So MySpace, bunch of text, bunch of videos. It was just a bunch of information. It was just like, it was crazy. Facebook comes along and you can post a whole lot of text, right? You can post your photos, a whole lot of text. You weren't really capped by the amount of text you can put on there. And again, we're still in the open up your computer and use it right now with Facebook. So it's still a captive audience that doesn't mind reading a bunch of stuff and discovering things, right? But the attention spans of users are every day getting sharper, right? So Facebook was too much because when Twitter launched, Twitter was like, okay, cool. They probably noticed, and this is all my conjecture, but they probably noticed that Facebook's popping. We're not going to do Facebook. We're just not going to make a Facebook clone, but let's make a resource where we can just kind of capture what Facebook does as far as a messaging platform. Just get your message out real quick and limit it to 140 characters. So people, and when Twitter came along with not smartphones, but with phones with screens. I would venture to say that. So Blackberries, Sidekicks, these phones started coming out with screens. I had a phone with screen and it was like, the keyboard was at the bottom and the screen was at the top. So everything was based on still typing things. But, Twitter was like 140 characters. People are doing this stuff on their phone. And one of the ways you can post on Twitter, and maybe the original way, I forgot, was you could text your message to a specific number and it'll post on Twitter for you. I think that may be the original way you can post on Twitter. So that's why it was like 140 characters. It was quick. It fit perfectly with the ever dwindling attention spans and folks just not wanting to really read stuff and even write stuff at this point. And then with these small keyboards on these phones, people didn't have time and the dexterity to just write big giant paragraphs of stuff. So 140 characters, that's all we could stand right then. So Twitter became the hot stuff on the block immediately, right? So it was like Facebook and Twitter. After Twitter, it was, that's text, but you can upload Twitter. added the ability to upload photography and stuff like that and video eventually, same like Facebook. But then what had to be noticed, and this is all my conjecture again, this is all just me assuming. What happened probably was Instagram came out. And remember, back in the day, Instagram was Instagram. Instagram was not an entity of Facebook. Facebook ended up buying Instagram. So Instagram came along like, hey, we noticed that the most popular posts on Facebook and on Twitter are posts that involve imagery. Okay. Photos. People love the photos, and that's what's most popular. So let's make a platform where we just concentrate more on the photos, less on the messaging, less on the words. Right. So Instagram and Pinterest, I think they came out at the same time, I think around 2010. And I remember when they came out because now I'm a full-fledged professional. I started teaching at 2008 full time. So I had to like really learn about this stuff. And Pinterest and Instagram were dope platforms because they were image based, and I was teaching things that revolved around creating imagery. Right. And they were kind of like photographers' dreams, you know, just put dope imagery. It wasn't selfie driven yet because, again, this is 2010. So if the iPhone came out in 2007, it still wasn't like everybody had an iPhone in their pocket when these things came out, especially, you know, with a high quality front facing camera for selfies. You know, that changed very quickly. But at the moment, it was kind of like still take a picture, make sure the picture's dope. And that's the kind of stuff you uploaded, not necessarily selfies. But the point from an attention span standpoint was we went from text and imagery to straight up text, 140 characters, to just imagery with some text accompanying it, right? So imagery was the star, the text was the co-star. With Facebook, I would say text was the star, the imagery was the co-stars. And then Instagram was like it. I was like, boom. But then came along, people were more interested in the video post when Instagram started incorporating video a little bit. So a company like Vine, if you remember, Vine comes out and say, hey, we're just going to concentrate on video. Short form video at that, because it had to be short form because at that time you wasn't storing, you know, hour-long videos. They were just too large. It was too expensive to do it. But short form video, quickly, Vine had his light for a quick second, but that's where TikTok came from, right? TikTok kind of spanned out of Vine, in my opinion, and it just went to, but okay, and I'm missing one. YouTube. A lot of times people don't consider YouTube a social media platform, but it definitely needs to be in those proceedings. And I think YouTube came out and it was like long form video, like just shoot video and put it on YouTube, but it was just like video supposed to be long. I don't even think there was a concept of short form video. And then Vine came out, introduced the concept of short form video, which led to TikTok. And this is basically saying that our user base, they don't have time to read. They're not going to read. And they don't, you know, they get bored with images. They need to be stimulated at all times because their attention spans are so short right now. So let's just feed them short form video, 30 seconds, keep that dopamine releasing, you know, keep their attention, keep them on us for as long as possible with these short form videos. Right. And, I think so right now it's kind of like what's next? Like, okay, short form videos, like, and I know we've been stagnant for a minute because I think in between Instagram coming out and YouTube and then TikTok, I think it was like 10, it was a big gap. It might have been close to 10 years. But before that, there was something new in the social media space that was popular like every couple years, sometimes every couple years. And then it just kind of like stayed Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And TikTok came around. So it's kind of like been the big three. Oh, Snapchat. Snapchat's in there too. Snapchat came out during that time. I think right after Instagram in the early 2000s. The early 2010s, right? But there's been Snapchat was rocking when I started teaching, and now it's still rocking, but nothing's kind of came along to kind of replace Snapchat or TikTok. So I was asking the students what's next, but based on the attention spans of us, of the users, like what are we looking for next. It's almost like we didn't know we wanted short form video until Vine came out and showed us for short form video. We didn't know we needed or wanted something like Facebook until something like Facebook came out. We didn't know that we wanted and needed something like Instagram until Instagram came out. So it's kind of like, I kind of see it as we've maybe reached the top of what we know of social media to be. And this is where the innovation happens, right? I don't think TikTok is innovative. I don't think, I think actually MySpace was super innovative. Facebook was innovative. And I think the innovation has been, I think the technology's gotten faster, but the innovation hasn't been really innovating that much, right? It's kind of like, oh, Facebook does this, just take what Facebook did and just make it better. Oh, this thing does this, let's just take what this thing and just make it better. It's just like not something just brand new. So I was asking the students because they are the future in Houston, right? And they should know. They should feel it in their communities. They should have a sense of what's going on the streets, right? And they didn't have an answer for me. So I set out to do my own research. And I tend to think that I don't want to say I tend to think because I really don't know. If you ask AI, for instance, AI says something like, hey, it's probably going to be VR, AR, social media, where you're working in a VR, AR space. And instead of going to somebody's page, like going to somebody's like virtual page, you're actually walking through somebody's virtual space and interacting with them virtually in a more, personable manner. I don't want to disagree with that. I think that's happening now. You can do that in Meta Horizons. I don't even think Meta Horizons exist anymore, but you can do it. You just get a Meta Quest. There's some apps out there that let you do that, but I never see a lot of people in it, and I never see a lot of people talking about it. And I still don't see a lot of people saying, "Hey, I'm going to get VR. I'm going to put AR glasses on." That day may come, but I don't see that day coming in the next 5 years. I see if that day comes, it's still like 8 to 10 years out, in my opinion. So the whole VR, AR thing might pop off, but I'm not sure. I would say I would hope. I'm thinking social media, I don't even think we need it, whatever. But if, it's going, I would hope it would social media would go the way of kind of how fashion goes, right? I hope it's kind of like what hip hop's doing now, as far as like the touring artists, like the older artists are kind of killing the game now, touring. In fashion, like for instance, like baggy pants are coming back in style. Like fashion always it comes back. So I'm like, maybe it's going to come back to something like MySpace and Black Planet used to be, where it was like, hey, this is my page, this is my resource, whatever it's going to be, and I get to do whatever I want to do in my space, and it's not controlled by the algorithm. I don't have to like know some secret robotic code and post on certain hours of the day and use certain keywords and might make sure I say certain things to get me up in the algorithm. And it's just like, hey, if people like what you're saying, you get it out there and you find people, and people find you organically, and then they can consume your content. It's almost like I hope we go back to that, which is still dope, but it puts the dopeness back into our hands and not in the algorithms, at the algorithms, doing or bidding. And nobody knows this algorithm, and you got to get with somebody that knows how to talk to robots to try to get your content to be seen by more than 4 people, right? So that's how it used to be before, algorithms didn't really start popping off, and I didn't start really hearing about them until, the 2010s. So all those social networks that were popping off, the Facebooks, the Twitter, all that stuff beforehand, you had to find people's content organically. You Googled them, you heard about it. It wasn't an algorithm, and it was chronological. Meaning that, which I miss. One thing I do miss is the chronological nature of social media, kind of like before the early 2010s. It was just like you went to Twitter and you opened it up and you saw the most recent tweets by the people you follow. And, you know, if somebody tweeted 1 second ago, that was dope. You saw it right now. It wasn't like you saw a tweet from 3 days ago, a tweet from 1 minute ago, a tweet from 6 hours ago, a tweet from 1 day ago, depending on, and it's saying, hey, this is the stuff we think you like, because the algorithm is so smart. Like, I miss the days when you just saw what was popping immediately. And I think the creativity, kind of getting out of the algorithm, getting away from, I mean, AI is here to stay, but, you know, not relying on robots to kind of like dictate our creativity and dopeness, and go back to like just being chronological and organic discovery. So this is just my conjecture of it all. But yeah, I was talking about that and I thought it was interesting, and I'm gonna talk about it. I had to go to class right now. I'm a little late, but I'm gonna continue the conversation, and if I talk to them and they have, you know, some interesting things to say, I might even bring them into the podcast booth for like a part 2 from a different perspective. So again, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, which, you know, I don't get enough viewers for people to do that yet. But if you have anything to say about how social media, how you experience social media, how you see social media going in the future, which is now. So, you know, how do you see it going? Do you have any ideas of what may be popping off next? I would love to hear about it. But again, thanks for those of you that watch and listen to the podcast. It's super dope. I mean, this is very therapeutic for me. It's very dope for me. And I love the fact that I got my 7 users, my 7 viewers. That's dope. So until next time, peace.